got it.
And welcome. People are signing in to that 4K virtual bunch. We're doing the retirement plan roundtable, and yes, we have people getting into the room. I am joined. My name, for those who don't know me, is Ari Rosenbaum. I got Bill Schories with Invesco, got Mike Webb, CAPTrust, James Holland, MillenniuM Retirement. What I always get MillenniuM
Retirement Advisors.
Mirror
Makes it easier.
Exactly. Okay, so what we do here, Mike compared it to the old Sports Reporters show. I compared it to Bill Maher, but then I was thinking, it could be like a McLaughlin group.
Yeah, that's what I said.
So it's like we're gonna try to do this monthly if we can. We'll have other people involved. Listen, people have a life, which always reminds me of one of my favorite Cheers episodes when Norm goes into the bar. It was the Gary Old Time Tavern bowling episode. So it goes to the bowling alley, goes into the bar, and they scream out Norm. And I forget Sam or whatever looks weird to Cliff, and Cliff's like, he's got a life, So first things first, as people still come in, and I'm right around the magic number of how many people I said would attend. The Department of Labor had a case in Florida where they got sued over the rollover rule, and it looks like they're backtracking from the rollover rule, and it looks like that stuff is going back to the drawing board. What do you think about that, Mike?
To be honest, I don't know why they obviously I defer to them, but it seemed weird to me why they appealed in the first place, because basically the lawsuit was over 2 Q&As that they had done. And they did a number of Q&As, of course, to follow up on the fiduciary rule. So these were just 2 that they got sued over. The judge upheld one, said, there's no reason to go forward on the one. It's fine. And said that the other one was problematic. And the one that was problematic was the one we always kind of thought would be problematic anyway, that if you rolled over to an IRA, the IRA provider would then have like forever fiduciary responsibility for you, basically is what the DOL said. And, they based that on the fact, there's that kind of cross governance they have with IRAs and stuff like that. But that was always the one where I think everybody, and feel free to chime in, guys. I think everybody thought that was kind of the biggest reach of the whole fiduciary rule. And I kind of liked it because, from my perspective, I used to get calls from all the time from participants who would have, who would be like, this person's calling me and wants my retirement money. And should I go with them? And like, they would, with the retirement raiders, they used to call them, people that raid plans for big account assets. And like those calls have dramatically dropped since the fiduciary rule went into place. So I kind of liked it, but to be honest, first of all, why spend that much money and time over one question in Q&A that could be overturned by the next presidential administration that comes in, when there's bigger battles to be fought and won over, even though, like I said, my personal preference, yes, I would like to see the ratings stop, but the ratings stop for the most part. And I don't think changing this one Q&A, all of a sudden, all these IRA providers are going to just dramatically, they spent probably hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever, change their procedures to be more compliant now. They're not going to go back and spend $100,000 to change their systems to go back where they started. So I think
the Q&A wasn't the Q&A came from a Trump administration rule, so that may explain why the Biden. I never understand the whole Department of Labor and the such that a couple people at the top change based on the administration, but the bulk of the people who work there, I assume, are still lifelong employees.
Yeah. So like, like I said, I'll defer to James and Bill, but I didn't see it.
To me, it's like the ESG rule, where it's like, this is going to be whoever's going to be in the White House. And it's like, I'm not pushing ESG funds because I don't think that they're the best funds out there for retirement savings. And I say, why put them in? Because, 2 years, you might have a new president and that rule's going to flip.
But what has Mike said 100 times, which I'm sure, not-for-profits have been doing it for like decades and nobody cares, and now all of a sudden, it's not like you're gonna walk in and everyone's gonna take all of their fund lineup, wipe it out, and just put, it's a philosophical thing. People want to make a choice, then, as long as it's spelled out, it's not an issue. But you're not gonna wholesale wipe out a fund lineup and then just put a whole ESG lineup in there.
Well, yeah, I mean that's interesting because I was always right of center, and I don't understand why people freak out about that. They allow ESG funds because again, it's a choice. People act as if it's a trustee directed plan, and they're going to put 100% of the assets. And I love how it's always a woke rule, which I don't know what that means.
I mean, no one's putting in an ESG fund now in this litigious environment. Do you think anyone's putting in an ESG fund that isn't going to follow their screens anyway?
Exactly.
I mean, not a big plan.
That's the
I
whole
don't think
thing.
a big plan was going to do that.
Yeah, it's no different than putting in a god awful fund. Exactly. I mean, you're going to screen it the same way you do, and you're going to make it an option, but you're going to have your defaults in there to cover your bases.
Well, Ari, let's look at the ping pong match that these regulations have become every time the administration changes. Since we drifted over to the ESG topic, the Obama administration, the DOL there put in a rule around ESG that probably went too far, saying that you can consider it, for tiebreakers. The right, when Trump got elected, they responded with their version of a rule that went too far the other way, that you cannot even consider it, can't even be discussed, not a factor.
Don't ask
remember that ESG has been around. ESG has been around for decades. It's not new. It doesn't state that you can't invest in oil companies or energy. It doesn't say you can't own gun manufacturers. That's socially responsible investing. ESG, you can own energy. You just own the best run energy companies from an environmental, social, and governance point of view. So it doesn't prohibit you from holding them. It's the fundamental process of any good manager's investment process and stock selection. Do you want to be investing in a company that discriminates or doesn't protect their shareholders or dumps chemicals into the water supply? No, you tend to avoid those companies. So what the DOL did here is try to find a neutral stance to prevent it from becoming a ping pong ball. That's why it says you may, not you must, not you can't, you may consider ESG as one of your factors. Doesn't say you have to. So I think it's a neutral stance. But because it went against the previous administration's ruling, which went against the previous administration's ruling,
right?
The people on the side of the previous administration, if you're still keeping track, got into an uproar.
And to Bill's point, we're so hypersensitive to everything now. I mean, you got everything. We were joking about the Mets awful because again we're a bunch of Met fans. That will turn into a political conversation somehow. They'll make, and it's everything has to be woke or anti-woke, and there's no middle.
It's great that you use the analogy of a sports team, James, because I think that's exactly it. I equate these ESG debates and all these other debates that we get into as people a lot like the sports team thing. I mean, like it's just there's always that person like I'll admit it. I'm a frequent part. I'm not so much nowadays because I'm really busy. But in the old days, I was a big participant in my alumni, basketball and football program message board, and there would always be that person on there who just be on there to disrupt. They would be just on there. They didn't necessarily think the teams were bad, but they just wanted to. They wanted to be on there just so they could disagree. And I think that's I think the perfect analogy is the sports team thing. I can always think about it like ESG is just another version of the sports team. Are you on the ESG team or are you not on the ESG team? You can't be in the middle. You can't be like, well, the ESG thing, being in the middle apparently is boring. Well, the ESG thing might make sense in certain conditions. No. You gotta be on it's like the PEP team or the annuity team. That's our new thing. Our new sports teams are PEP.
Exactly. Guaranteed income, is it not guaranteed income? Is there yes, no, agreed. Excellent point, Mike.
Oh, and that's another great point about we don't even call it ESG in 403B. We still call it socially responsible. We don't want people to know that they're really unfortunately still ESG in reality.
Yeah, with me and ESG funds, I'm the guy who drives a Prius V, and my favorite investment is MGM stock, ESG Properties or Philip Morris. Next on the hit list, it's something I call, Order 66. Now I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I believe Order 66 is when in Revenge of the Sith, the Chancellor, soon to be Emperor Palpatine, orders the clone troopers to attack the Jedi. Now, I think the Order 66 in the retirement plan business is the days when you have very, very large providers, TPAs. They're going to be in the investment advisory business, and they are going to take clients away from advisors. Now, people think that, back in the day when I first met James, we had this guy on these groups who wasn't even an advisor, and he claimed that, when we were talking about fee transparency and litigation, he said we were selling fear. So I'm sure people will say that my Order 66 idea is the selling of fear. But what do you guys think? I mean, do you think that, some of the larger providers are just going to look for ways to make more money and just say, you know what, thank you, advisor. We really don't need you, or maybe here's a little bit of a trail. We'll service the client from here on.
Yeah, Ari, that's been going on for decades. I mean, you had Fidelity in the space, and they had an advisor sold product and a direct sold product. You have Vanguard as a record keeper. Advisors, RIAs can use Vanguard. Vanguard sells direct. Same thing with ADP. If I'm an advisor, I want to make sure the record keeper I partner with is a partner. Now, do I have to worry about them going after my clients? If I'm an advisor that's doing my job effectively, that should never even be a worry of mine. It's the advisor who's not servicing their client, that's not delivering, that should be worried about a record keeper who cannot possibly know their client as well as the advisor going after them. Now, if the record keeper wants to show good faith with the advisor community, they should be able to have a mechanism where they know the advisor's wishes not to solicit participants with less than make up a number, $200,000 balance. If those people file, for a rollover, the advisor should be notified. Anything under that, the advisor can say, I'm not interested in smaller account balances. That's something where the advisor can rest easy, knowing that the record keeper isn't going after their target market, and the record keeper can still help their margins by attracting IRA rollover business. This is all a function of the race to zero, and record keeping fees being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. They're starving for revenue, whether it's managed accounts, whether it's the fixed account, whether it's personal services for the participant, whether it's launching SMAs that they brand themselves and white label that's offered by a fund. They're going to continue to look for ways to innovate and drive revenue, and the participant is another one. So you have, we can speak the names here. You have Empower. You just have to turn on the television and see their commercials. They're a good partner for the advisors, but they're exploring ways to penetrate the retail space with the retail investor and take on the Fidelity model. If I'm an advisor, I don't have a problem with that, knowing going into that that's what they're about, and I can set parameters over which participants I'm interested in. I'm okay with that. I know some advisors won't agree with that, but that's the nature of the business now. It's all about margins and trying to drive revenue where they can get it.
Yeah, but so then, Bill, I agree, but we'll push back a little in terms of they're also, they understand people are lazy and they have the technology. So, hey, I just quit and I got $100,000, then I push this button and it stays there and I forget about it. Then,
Yep.
Yeah. So I do think that absolutely has to be parameters in terms of, and to Bill's point, like you said, if you're engaged, then you're the first person they're calling anyway. So if they're not calling you first, then clearly you've dropped the ball somewhere from a communication standpoint. So regardless of whether they're, they have the structure in place, there should be, there has to be a little personal responsibility from an advisor perspective. I agree 100%.
Mike, as an advisor, how do you
I'm
feel?
an advisor. I agree with you.
Okay.
but I will add that, hey, record keepers, you want to be fiduciaries, man? Come and play in my space. I'll The tent is
don't
empty.
wanna do that.
Empty. The tent is empty, man. I can use all the help I can get. You know, but you guys don't want to be fiduciaries. You want to have it both ways. You want to be able to sell the services, but you don't want to have responsibility for it. That's why I'm a little, I get a little upset, if you will.
Well,
Because-
to talk about Bill's point is like, Bill remembers me from a certain producing TPA in New York City. And, we had a bad reputation of stealing business from the advisors that brought us business until there was a salesman by the name of Rich Larita that, Bill and I know very, very well. And Rich had to, smooth over fences. And there were situations where if the client fired the broker, Rich would actually have us fire the plan sponsor as a client because he didn't want to be, oh, well, you carried on without me and you replaced me and whatnot. And it's such an interesting situation. And I always tell a story that when I started my own practice, I went to I want to say it was a Morgan Stanley office in, I think, Melville, Long Island. And the guy running the office says, oh, your old boss, the guy who ran the TPA, he's not allowed here because he stole one of our broker's business. So it's always been there. I just think that, you get, the problem is that compared to 20 years ago, you get so much consolidation in this business. Iron Financial got bought out, Creative Planning bought him out, and a friend of James and I, he's an advisor, and he uses Iron as a 338, and he saw these ads for Creative Planning on Florida TV, and he freaked out.
Yeah. So yeah, Bill, being on the fund side, how much of it do you think plays into, hey, we don't want to put our proprietary fund in to keep the assets, so now maybe we can get it from the participant side? Do you think that has any weight in the?
Oh, no, because they do want to put their proprietary funds in the lineup and get the participant and do the managed account and get the fixed account. So listen, you take revenue wherever you can get it. But and I'm saying that half kingly, but I have not seen the foot come off the gas of proprietary funds from the record keeping point of view as much as they can control the lineup. They don't really control the lineup, when you get down to it, though. It's the advisor that controls the lineup. You're not going to have a situation where, the wholesaler for a certain record keeper says, I want these 3 funds in the plan. You will have a situation where the pricing might be better, if you map to certain funds or certain options. I know there's record keepers out there that provide discounts if you map to their target date funds. There's other record keepers that give a discount if you just include their target date funds. You don't even have to map to them because they know it will gravitate, people will gravitate and they'll get more revenue. You look at the fixed accounts in the insurance company products, that's exempt from fee disclosure, remarkably. The insurance lobby is a really good one.
Yes.
Nobody knows what the expense ratio is on those things. They tell you, some of them in their proposal say there is no fee. Well, if there is no fee, pay me the gross,
Exactly. I'll take the spread.
Right, but we'll never know what that spread is. So there's different levers they can pull. So, if they're not pulling the proprietary fund lever, they have the participant lever, they have the managed account lever. There's all different mechanisms. So they're going to make their revenue one way or the other. Sometimes they're able to pull all the levers, but as an advisor, we have to be aware of that in the advisor community and educate our plan sponsors that there's no such thing as a free plan. And, for those of you that know me, have heard me say this for a while, if your plan is free, you're probably paying too much, because it's not about what you're paying, because you're not paying anything. It's about what they're getting, and let's take a look and see what those numbers are.
Which is why you ever see the survey where, they still 78% of plan participants think their 401k plan is free, or the plan sponsor. No, you're asking the wrong question. The question should be, do you know how much you're paying for your 401k plan?
Right.
No, it's not is it free? It's just, I don't know. Yeah.
Everybody on this call, whether on the panel or in the audience, nobody here is a nonprofit. We provide services. We're entitled to compensation for those services. We don't begrudge anybody that, but be open and transparent about it. And let us know what you need to make to run the plan profitably. And if you do that, most people don't have an issue. It's when these hidden fees that are buried in the fine print on page 18 of the agreement pop up, or if you go to move money out of a fund, or you leave, you terminate services and go to move to another record keeper, that all of a sudden, the door opens to all these other charges that you aren't aware of.
Yeah, Bill, do you still use the Houston Astros 5500 for your presentations, or have you moved?
Absolutely. I update it every year still to this day.
And Bill always had the greatest presentations. Because I was at events that Bill invited me to speak at. I remember there was at was it the Huntington whatever Marriott that's actually in Melville or whatever. But yeah, so it was always fun to see that presentation come out. The Houston Astros 5500 always is a good part of the conversation. But yeah, I mean, everybody's looking for money. It always reminds me of the scene in the movie Donnie Brasco when they got to make the weekly take, and all of a sudden they're hitting the parking meter for loose change in order to make the take for the week. And that's how it is, I think, in the retirement plan business. The good old days when I was speaking to an advisor this morning about I got to do a presentation for $1 billion 401k plan next week, and the advisor was saying, well, this used to be a Merrill plan, and they never bothered. Back in 2008, they never discussed what the fees were, and blah blah blah. And I said, yeah, we used to call that the good old days, when you just made hand over fist, and you didn't have to tell your clients how much you made. But times have changed. Speaking of times have changed, Secure 2.0, that was signed a couple weeks before we did our very first roundtable back in January. It was always interesting. People in the Q&A, with the not only the Q&A, but also the message boards. A lot of people didn't like the, what I always call the communist aspect of auto enrollments and whatnot. But one interesting change about the Secure 2.0 that is effective right now that nobody has put in place is the provision that will allow plan participants to elect their matching or profit sharing contributions on an after-tax basis. Still, what we're now almost June 1 and we don't have any guidance. I don't know how popular that would be, but apparently that is a provision that was originally effective from the date Biden signed into law, and yet we still got no guidance.
Yeah, about to say, if we have any administrators in the audience, perhaps they'd like to share how they're going to address that, because I think that's, again, to Bill's point earlier about the pendulum swinging, it's like, all right, let's change everything, and then wait, no, let's, have to get back to the middle. These are, that applies to, I think, a lot of the student loan aspect of things and a few others out there. They're like, oh, let's put it in the bill. We'll figure out how to make it work later, but let's get it in there. And then now it got passed, and now they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we make it work?
Well, these were cost considerations. So with the Savers credit becoming the Savers match, with some of the other provisions that were revenue negative to the government, they had to come up with provisions that were revenue positive. Now, it's funny the way Congress works is they only look out 10 years to balance the costs. Anything that happens after year 10 doesn't matter. So if you think about it, anything that is Rothified, if that's even a word, catch-up contributions now have to go in via a Roth for people making over 145,000 starting next year. That is revenue positive to the government because they're getting the money today. What they're not factoring in, because it's more than 10 years down the road in most cases, is the lack of revenue that they're going to run into when that money comes out. But they don't care. That's down the road. We can pass that on. So this provision to allow employer contributions to go in as a Roth, mechanically, it'll work just like an in-plan Roth conversion, but the employer is still going to get the tax deduction for the contribution. So it's not the employer making a Roth contribution because the employer still gets the deduction. Once it hits the record-keeping system, if the employee elects that provision, it's automatically converted to a Roth. My guess is it'll trigger a 1099, showing the conversion of those employer dollars. Now, it can only be for.
I thought it was going to be going as W-2 because it's you're paying income on it now, so that's why I thought it would be a W-2. But I guess you.
Yeah, I see. That's where the guidance comes in.
But I guess you could say it's a 1099 by. A Roth deferral is a W-2 situation, but I guess if it goes into the plan, It's the same
It's
thing.
going, it's going into the plan from the employer, so the employer continues to get the deduction. Then it's treated, this is my understanding, I haven't seen the final guidance, but it'll be considered a Roth conversion of that, an immediate Roth conversion of that employer contribution. So that'll trigger the 1099 disclosing the Roth conversion amount instantaneously from the time it's deposited. Now, we haven't seen the final guidance, so Ari, you could be right, I don't know. I would be surprised if it shows up as income on the W-2, because then how do you do FICA and disability and everything else that needs to be withheld on that?
What's the advantage for an employer who already has Roth conversions? What in the world is the advantage to do this?
The advantage is if you're one of those people who owns the business and you want to put in after tax, that's what you do. But I don't see anybody, I don't see plan sponsors running, knocking down the door of their TPA and saying, you got to add this.
Yeah, thankfully, most of the provisions are voluntary in Secure 2.0.
Yeah. Plus they made it so that it's vested.
Yeah.
So of course, plans with vesting schedules can't do it, because that would be the latest employee scam. They could just take their what would be their non-vested money and then Rothify it to make it vested. So that eliminates, like, a lot of plans I work with still have vesting schedule.
Yeah, it would be safe harbor plans would be.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't see that as a major provision. I think that the tax credits are going to be the biggest deal, the startup credit and the employer contribution credit. If anybody in the audience isn't talking about that, you need to be. That's a huge benefit for the small business owners out there looking to start plans. I think it's going to put a damper on the PEP and MEP marketplace, because that's been touted as cost savings. Well, with these tax credits, there's not much to save anymore because it's all free when you factor in the credits. And then the contribution credit even makes it more powerful.
Yeah, just free money.
Yeah, and then
anybody, well, except in my world, the poor non-for-profits get the short end of the stick again.
But one of the things people talked about Secure 2.0, which I still love, even though I'm, like I said, a little bit right of center, is the automatic enrollment. I think that anything that gets people to save is a good thing, even if we have to force them. Yep. But we're not forcing them, we're automatically enrolling them.
Yeah, and then and what's the retention rate? Like 95% of, in terms of people. Again, it goes back to the same conversation you have. The reason people don't join when you don't auto enroll is because they have to do something. Well, the reason they don't opt out is because they have to do something. So they complain for 2 weeks that their paycheck is short $50 to $100, and then they forget about it. And then they look at their account statement and they have some money and they're like, the hell with it, let it go. And I'm all for it.
I just saw an article that says we have like a $1.3 trillion retirement deficit for people retiring like in the next 10 years or so. Guess what? We're not having that with the next generation, because they've all been auto enrolled.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Generation Z. It shows that they're, deferring at a greater clip than any other generation. And you were led to believe, if you had a discussion 10, 15 years ago, they said, well, once the baby boomers retire, that's going to be the end of the retirement plan business because nobody's saving. Yeah. And it's just so funny how that, it's the beauty of this business. It kind of always reinvents itself when everybody says, oh, this is going to be the end of the 401k business. It's the Chicken Little. We heard so much when there was going to be fee disclosure. Oh, the only providers that are going to make money are the ones who charge next to nothing for administration. Mm-hmm. Or plans, remember how they used to scare, if plans have to get fee disclosure, they don't want to deal with it. They're just going to terminate all the plans. Yeah. Or you heard that same thing with the fiduciary rule. All these plans are going to be without an advisor. And here we are still today, and the business is doing really well. Still.
And so what was the government response to help speed it up? Let's have one federal retirement plan. Now forget about it. Now we're going to be in business for another 40 years. Because
I think that's another like a fear tactic to scare the crap out of people, and that's just not going to happen.
No. Well, listen, if it does, I think it's going to be a windfall for the private markets, because what business owner do you know that is used to making every decision for themselves around their business would ever sit back and say, yes, I want everything handled for me by the government for my business? Nobody's going to say that. And then with
And,
the tax,
and did I read somewhere that I think Dan Gilbert and Sean Parker are like the two head guys behind?
yeah, well, it's Teresa Ghilarducci. Yeah, it's Teresa Ghilarducci,
Yeah.
Sean Parker
Okay.
from Napster. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's
So-
still around.
Yeah, so they do have some interesting backing. They do have bipartisan support. And listen, if it helps close the coverage gap, I hope they launch it. But they will not replace the private sector
No.
because no small business owner, very few small business owners are going to gravitate towards the government for a solution. And, you know, this is all driven by the new school economics with Teresa Ghilarducci, in that she's pining for the golden days of defined benefit plans.
And has been for how long?
Yeah, and
she's been doing it. She's been doing it forever. I think
So,
right.
probably
But
as long
this
as
is
I've been
her,
around.
but her solution is the government solves everything. And if you look at the days of the defined benefit, to quote Billy Joel, the golden days weren't always, the good old days weren't always good. You know,
exactly.
because the average person didn't get a defined pension benefit, because if they changed jobs, if the company went out of business, you know, if they were fired 6 months before they became eligible, they got nothing. You know, it's less than a quarter of the population outside of the municipal sector, and the unions got a defined benefit pension. So these good old days didn't exist for the vast majority of Americans. And if you want to look it up, ask anybody that worked at Studebaker, which is the reason why we had ERISA.
Ever since the first place, exactly.
That was the founding case for to pass the law, you know, that we have today. Was the Studebaker employees getting nothing after working there for 40 years.
And even post ERISA, I mean, yes, the PBG steps in, but they don't guarantee like the full benefit that you know, this marketplace is littered with people who you know, didn't get the benefits they were promised.
I worked on a lot of union plans. The Pension Protection Act did a good job of putting a lot of these pensions out of business. You know, unfunded plans, putting it in the red zone, and basically, you know, spinning the, you know, asking for withdrawal liability, having these employers become infinite payers into a system to fund the plan, and killing the plan. Killing the plan. I mean, I've been involved with a lot of dead unions, and that's what happens. Even my great uncle, he was part of a meat packing plant. He worked. They used to make Spray hot dogs, Marathon Enterprises, Spray hot dogs and salamis. So Uncle Jack was really, really good. You know, come time he'd bring you meat. And his union went under, and the plan was completely underfunded. It just
the system we have isn't perfect. It's far from perfect, but it's the best thing we have, and it's the best benefit for the middle class I think that there's ever been. It's the largest asset, you know, with the exception of your home, for the vast majority of Americans. And they're in a far better point than they are or ever have been from a retirement security point.
I mean, 401k plans always gets the bad rap that they put defined benefit plans out of business. Defined benefit plans were going to be out of business once the employers realized they didn't have to fund these things. And people, you know, maybe I'm saying a dreadful thing, but people are living a lot longer. You know, why is Social Security system such a screw up? It's because people live longer. You know, back in the days in the 30s, I mean, people are going to fight with me about the statistic, but the life expectancy, I think, was 64 when they put in Social Security.
Yeah,
and of course,
that's why it's called.
People will say that that's not true because infant mortality and blah blah blah. But in those days, you know, people living to their 70s, these were old people. You know,
and Social Security is called the survivor's benefit. That's the technical name for it, is a survivor's benefit, because you survived. You know,
old age and survivor's benefit, right?
Yeah, you were supposed to get a check and drop dead, was what you were supposed to do according to the actuary tables. So that's why it's known as a survivor's old age and survivor's benefit. Mike, you're exactly right. Yeah. It was never designed to be this thing that paid monthly checks for 30 years.
But it's always funny when people talk about the good old days, because I always write about it. My aunt and my father grew up in the 1950s Israel, and the way my aunt would describe it, it was glorious. And my father says, "What are you talking about? We had ration coupons. We were starving." You know, if you looked at Israel, I think at one point, one year, the GDP 70% was supplied by West Germany as part of reparations. It was austere times, but people want to remember what they want to remember. And they want to remember when they were young, and it was fantastic. It was the greatest thing ever. And I'm just not one of those people that says, oh, wow, growing up in the 70s, it was the greatest thing ever. Now, I was happy when I got cable TV in 1989. That to me was a big deal, but that's just nonsense. That's how people talk. But automatic enrollment. So yeah, all new plans. I think that's one of the quirkiest rules. You could be a new plan that came into effect on 1/1/23. You don't have to have automatic enrollment now, but you have to have automatic enrollment on 1/1/25.
Yeah,
And that is screwing up everybody. That's screwing up everybody. Because how many phone calls I had, I have a new plan in 2022. Well, as long as you got it in place before the effective date of Secure 2.0, you have nothing to worry about. So it's interesting that you'll have plans that set up today and they probably don't have automatic enrollment, and they probably should, because in 1/1/25, they got no choice. And, again, the idea that people should be forced into it. When the Pension Protection Act of 2006 came about, I was the biggest fan of automatic enrollment because it created that fiduciary protection that you didn't have back in the old days when it was negative election. You put the money in a money market account and that was it. So to me, it was always a gimmick to juice up the ADP rate for the NHCs. I always thought it was just a gimmick. And once you had the QDIA, it was a great thing. And I remember writing an email to Rich and a whole bunch of people at this TPA that I worked at, and I still haven't had a response to my email, which 17 years later. I said, we're a producing TPA. We gotta hug ourselves around this. This is great for us because more assets is more money. And Rich Larita, may he rest in peace, one of the few times he was actually wrong about something, he said, oh, this automatic enrollment, this is awful. No, none of my clients are going to want it. You're going to have people knocking on the door, demanding their 3% back. And I said, most employees are passive aggressive. They're not going to say boo. When I worked at that TPA, the only time people ever complained, not when, Rich was let go and he was sick and all that stuff, or we were changing the health insurance every year to save a couple of bucks. It was when they stopped giving free milk for the coffee for the machine. And once they stopped that, that's when they got upset. So I think that automatic enrollment is a fantastic thing. And let's segue to, we talked about the federal plans, but I just saw Minnesota is going to be probably the next state to have these state IRA programs. I work with Association New Jersey, and for years and years, we're still trying to figure out when New Jersey's ever going to implement regulations in order to have their state plan. But that's another thing that people argue about that I think that, again, is a fantastic selling point for our business. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Cal Savers was going to be the end of 401k plans, right? And then it's the same thing. To Bill's point, hey, great, if there's another thing that's going to help somebody save who doesn't want to do it, fine. But is there anything that's going to be this magic wand that's going to change everything? And what 12 years ago we had open map conversations, right? And that was going to be the end of everything. And so every time someone comes up with a new idea, it's like, wait, this is it. It's not going to fix. You want to have more options, great, but this, end all be all aspect is just, it becomes, comedy at some point.
Well, they just did the first major study I'm aware of the impact of these plans on the private sector.
Right.
And is anyone surprised that the number of private sector plans actually went up?
Yeah.
Anyone surprised at all?
Yeah. No. Yeah. It became.
They didn't need to do a study. I could have told them that.
I've been saying it all along.
Yeah.
And Bill said, well, you want your money with government because they do such a great job with our money.
Listen, they can't deliver the mail. They're not going to handle my retirement savings. But what happened is that, you have the government saying it's mandatory now, and now that it's mandatory, the small business owner realizes they have to do something. They're not going to do that something with the government, at least the vast majority of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Agreed. Yep.
Because listen, small business owners, when it comes to offering a plan, they ask the same three questions all the time. How much can I do for myself? How little can I do for my employees? What's it going to cost? And if you can deliver a custom plan design such as new comparability with the safe harbor and show them the benefits of plan design that benefits them while still giving a benefit to their employees and get it for free after the tax credits, why wouldn't you do it with an advisor and a TPA?
Or join a PEP. And I think that is, again, with PEPs, we all talk about it, and JD Carlson is always, debating how he hates PEPs and all that stuff. But to me, the idea that PEPs save money is the biggest nonsense, because MEPs never saved any money. Can't get a plan. You can't get a plan of critical mass. And we'll talk about PEPs again because of my experience that I was telling the guys before we started. But PEPs to me is the solution for a lot of these small plans. My daughter works at a pizzeria 15 hours a week. I know they don't have a retirement plan, but when New York ever implements their plan, I can't see them signing up for a New York State plan. We all have this, we all are varying degrees of politics, but I think a lot of us, when it comes to economic issues, we don't want government to have our money, because we know what that's like, whether we're a Democrat or Republican.
My big issue with the PEPs is literally, I can remember starting this business in the early 90s and doing these association plans. And the biggest problem then, I think it's still the biggest problem now, you get all the worst people who join. You don't get the good businesses with assets and people who care. People do this.
Well, I'm the attorney.
Rogues gallery.
I'm
the rogues gallery of
the
people.
Association MEP, and we always half the meetings about the two employers that refuse to provide information or refuse to put in money, deferrals in as soon as possible. Yeah, it's true. But PEPs, I think the biggest drawback I still have on PEPs is there's still no guidance. So I was telling the guys before, I have a MEP that's going to get converted to a PEP. And so I had a TPA that wanted to be the PPP, and I'm the plan sponsor and the fiduciary, and they wanted me to transfer, the advisor and the TPA wanted me to transfer the plan sponsorship to them, and I refused. And I think I had another ERISA attorney says, they're probably misreading the new law and think that you have to be in order to be the PPP, you also have to be the plan sponsor, and that's not the case. So one of the biggest problems I still have with PEPs is there's no guidance. There's no prohibited transaction rules. So, if I would have been a schmuck and surrendered that sponsorship of the plan for absolutely nothing, which I wasn't willing to do, I told the advisor for the first time, I have a quote that I never used ever, but I've always said it all the time. And I used it in a conversation for the first time 2 weeks ago. And James will love it. It was, I'm from Brooklyn. You'll have to wake earlier in the morning to pull a fast one on me.
Absolutely.
So, that was, the idea that an advisor would take his plan, give it to a TPA who would be the PPP and the plan sponsor. I said, you can never fire them. And how is that not a breach of fiduciary duty? And how is and there are TPAs that wear all the hats. And how is that not? How are these plans going to be? We have a fiduciary duty to pay all the reason plan expenses. How can we do that? We're gonna, I'm Mr. TPA. I run this PEP. I'm going to compete and shop the plan around. I'm never going to fire myself. So what do you think, guys, about PEPs? I know we're not all in the JD. This is the worst thing ever, but
Again, it's an option. It's an option, which is fine. And if it fits to Bill's point in terms of, I'm not giving it to the government. Well, guess what? A lot of people are not giving up their independence of being that business owner where they're now shoved in with a bunch of other people. They like the ability to just have their own plan. So, does it have a fit somewhere? Great. But again, is it going to fix everything? Again, the cost saving thing is a myth. Now, if you have 100 accounts, you have to get an audit anyway. So you don't need an audit anymore. You're going to pay for it. Yes, granted, you could probably spread the cost over more people. I get it, but it's not this. We're going to find one thing and it's going to make everything better. Is just, it's a colossal waste of time because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and James, that's my issue with PEPs is not with the PEPs themselves, because they do serve a purpose. There is a place in the market for them, and if it helps close the coverage gap, like just like the
Right.
government plans, I'm all for them. The issue I had with when they came out, how they were being marketed as this great cost savings vehicle. And we all know that that didn't materialize. It's not going to materialize. And there's no real big administrative advantage, because if you want a 316, you can have a 316 and not be a PEP. If you want a 321 or 338, you can have that outside of a PEP. Investment cost, you can get R6 at any time, as a startup. So those cost differentials, other than saving the 5,500 fee, really didn't materialize. And I don't think it was a good trade-off for the flexibility that you lost around plan design, investment selection, and everything else. But having said that, that's how they were marketed when they first came out, about this huge cost savings thing. And those in the industry saw that wasn't going to be the case, but yet they still went down this road about this is going to save so many people so much money. Still, I'm not anti-PEP. I just wish, and I hope that they come up with the proper marketing mechanism to drive this vehicle to the right universal plan sponsors.
Yeah, the proper marketing I've said since day one was fiduciary outsourcing. You can't promise something you cannot deliver. It's false advertising. And there's nothing worse than I hate in the retirement plan business than false advertising. And Bill, you know how I feel about fiduciary warranties, and that's something, I'll out Bill as the guy who came up with the term. If the insurance companies gave away fiduciary warranties for free and they're in the business of insuring risk, what does that say about the value of a fiduciary warranty? That was
Yeah, how much risk are they really underwriting if they're in the business of underwriting risk and charging a premium for it?
I think
and not charging anything for this. How much risk are they underwriting?
Yeah, exactly.
No. Zero.
Yeah, I was talking. I think I was talking about one of the last podcasts that there was a company. Actually, they got sued for proprietary fund. I think they just settled it, and so the guy. I said no. A client was interested in hiring them, and there was a fiduciary warranty involved. I said, "Don't go there. Don't do that." There was at an association meeting where they, bought the table, and the funny story was they tried to bribe me with Mets tickets. They gave me tickets for one of their clients' events, and it was Hyundai Club tickets. And Bill knows quite a bit about the Hyundai Club. It's the best known secret at Mets games, because you're sitting like in a sweet life setting, and there's all you
Hope
can
it's not a secret anymore.
Well, yeah, I told people about it, and then all of a sudden the ticket price. But then again, I used to go when the Mets were terrible, and you could go there for like $50, and all you can eat. So yeah, I had a whole event for it was like close to my 50th birthday, and Bill was there, and 2 feet away from us was Christie. Chris Christie was
Sure.
a suite over there. But yeah, it's just it's just interesting, the way business is, and the fiduciary warranty. There's still people out there that have it, and I still laugh about it. But I think we're heading up over an hour, so let's talk about a non-retirement plan question. Always interesting to find out. Name your favorite movies of all time. Mike.
Dr. Strangelove.
What? Oh, we could talk about it. What?
Dr. Strangelove.
That's a good one. I saw that many, many years ago when when there was this thing called Netflix, and they used to send you DVDs in the mail.
Ah, you still remember those days?
Yeah, well, that's when I first got my first DVD player in 2000s. You had that little thing where they gave you a month for free, and I'm like, why am I going to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video? Let me do this, and it had all. So it was a time of course, before I got married, where I partake in a lot of those movies. Same thing with law school. Law school, the biggest deal for me in law school is Hollywood Video opened up nearby, and I was watching a lot of movies from the 70s. So yeah. What other movies?
The Sting.
Oh, this thing is fantastic.
Good one, yeah.
That's one of my wife's favorite ones.
It's I'll keep the Robert Shaw theme going, because he's a phenomenal actor. And I'm not going to say Jaws, but it's another movie he's in, and there's been
Thinking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
there you go. There's been
There you go.
three versions of that movie.
One was a TV movie. I don't think I saw I think one of them was a TV movie, and the other one was with Denzel and Travolta, which wasn't
Yeah.
bad.
The TV movie was with Edward James Olmos,
Oh,
but
yeah,
the
we did
original
do-
with Walter Matthau and Robert Shaw
Yes,
is
exactly.
probably my favorite movie of all time. That and Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, yeah, another good one.
I had a
Well,
movie
you, Ari.
poster. I had a Dog Day Afternoon movie poster that I got in law school and whatever. I lost in the flood, which I'm sitting in I'm sitting in the room that I think I lost that poster.
Yeah.
But everybody knows my favorite movie of all time is Airplane.
A
Two
classic.
is probably Fletch. 3 is The Godfather, and this is like I think I can't do 1 to 10 because there's like Shawshank, there's Goodfellas,
Midnight Run has to be up.
Midnight
Oh,
Run.
Midnight Run is awesome. Yeah.
Midnight Run. I use that line. I said to my daughter, I said, she says somebody's staring at me, so I said you got to pull the De Niro line. You're gonna propose, otherwise quit staring.
Exactly.
Charles Grodin and his dry humor in that movie was awesome.
Yep.
The fistophobia, I got agoraphobia. It was just there was so many funny scenes in that movie. That's actually one of the most underrated movies of all time. Yaphet Kotto as Alonzo, the FBI agent.
Alonzo Mosley. Yeah.
Yep.
Alonzo Mosley. And when De Niro gets pulled into the car and he's like, did you get those all at the same place? The sunglasses and
Agent Foster Grant. Exactly. Yep.
Is that the movie where he says "Glad to see me," or is that a different movie?
Yes, that's Marvin. Yeah,
Oh yeah, Marvin. Yeah. I'm not gonna fall for that again, Jack. And of course, Marvin is what's his name in Beverly Hills Cop 1, 2, and he will be in the 4th one.
Ah,
What's his name?
Yes.
I think it's John Masterson.
Taggart.
Sure.
Taggart. Sergeant Taggart, right? Oh no.
Sergeant Taggart, yeah.
Yes.
John, what's his name? That's I forget the actor's name.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Masterson or not, something like
No,
that.
it's
I'm
not,
not
it's
sure.
not Masterson. But yeah, it's that's what I'm looking forward to. And actually, the movie that I'm looking forward to, I'm watching the trailer every day, 1,000 times a day, is Oppenheimer. Have you seen the trailers for that? I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan.
Okay.
And, the Batman movies and Dunkirk. And if you see this trailer, it was something, not the latest trailer they dropped, but the first one, or it's like they won't understand it. They're confused by it because they don't understand it. They won't understand it until they use it or something like that. I just find it like fascinating. And it's the guy who played Scarecrow in all the Batman movies.
Okay.
Cillian Murphy. Any other choices before we close this out?
No, I think we hit most of the good ones. Yeah.
No Country for Old Men.
And Justice for All is up there too. And Justice for All is up there for me too. So.
And Justice for All, I actually do have the movie poster upstairs in my bedroom. So in my wife's bedroom, my bedroom along with my wife, we got our wedding photo. We got a picture of Ricky Henderson autographed. So every single time we meet Ricky Henderson, my son always has to bring that up. And there's a poster for Grease, and there's a poster for And Justice for All.
There you go.
And In Justice for All, it's once in a while someone fights back.
There you go.
Which is the story of my existence in law school.
About to say, and our existence here, right? On behalf of participants. So.
Yeah. But yeah. So I think we're almost an hour, and that's that. We could belabor it for another hour or so, but people have lives, as Cliff Clavin would say.
Oh, thank you, Ari. Thanks
No, I
for
appreciate the time. Always good to catch up with you guys. Yes, thanks.
thanks to our audience.
Thanks for everybody that tuned in. I appreciate everybody joining.
Yeah,
us.
it was a little bit more than I thought there would be. The free invitation, people decided.
I mean, next time, let's take some audience.
Well, we got to get the ratings right, Ari, or else we don't get picked up. We don't get picked up.
Exactly. We're not going to get
my Zoom. We're always going to get picked up, until there's like 2 people left in the audience. But yeah, we'll do this again. We'll schedule it. I got to send the email out again and schedule another time, and we'll invite other people on as well.
That would be good. Special guest. They always had on McLaughlin. Didn't they always have a guest panelist?
There was always exactly. Yeah.
Well, when Pat Buchanan couldn't make it or whatever, or when Morton Condrake left for the Standard or whatever it was, and Fred Barnes also left too. Yeah, they always had to bring on somebody.
You got
okay,
it.
You got it,
guys. Everybody have a nice one. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.